This meeting to order. And if we could rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, if we can have roll call, please.
Okay, Grace Reed.
Here.
Jeannie Hill.
Here.
I don't see Charles Stadelman. Bill Flynn. Here. Scott Liebertor's excused. Richard Gilmore's not here. Vicki Drumheller.
Here.
Tim Borden is excused. Sharon Herman. Here. Susan LaRusso.
Here.
Felicia Hollerman.
Felicia Holloman here.
Wanda Simmons.
Here.
Nicholas Shakowski.
Present.
Dave Moore.
Here.
And Preet Singh.
Here.
Okay, so if we'll look at the minutes, and these are the minutes from February 10th, not last week's. We have to go back a little in our mind. Just so, has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes?
I didn't see anything that needed to be changed or anything. I'll move approval unless somebody else has any.
Okay, have a move to approve from Grace.
I'll second.
Second by Bill. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we have approved minutes as written. Thank you very much. Unfinished business, Mr. Stokes, if you can walk us through our 2.02.
I believe you all had sent out there it goes. All sent out or in front of you the additional language that you talked about and voted on as far as, and what I've had to do, because it's so much, I didn't want to make it one long paragraph, so I did break it up into A, B, and C, and I put the A is exactly what we talked about last week. There's no changes there. B and C adds the additional requirements that we talked about of saying that a person to qualify couldn't be convicted of a felony or a misdemeanor involving moral turpitude or breach of public trust. Then we have the last sentence, only because as I was doing this research, there is a lot of cases out there, a lot of opinion letters from the Secretary of State and everything as to when does a person need to comply, meet those requirements. It usually falls in the realm of residency, where maybe somebody will meet the 2-year mark before the election day, but not before the qualifying day. And so that question comes up a lot. It's like, when do you need to meet these requirements? I could see the same thing happening if we were looking at like getting an order of pardon or expungement. If they say, well, I've applied for it, I don't have it today when I'm filing my paperwork, but I will have it by election day. Rather than causing confusion and having that be an issue, I took this, and there are a lot of municipalities that have this language in there, which they set a date, and so I set the date that it would be the day that they qualify, the day they submit their paperwork to the city clerk. Again, we didn't talk about that. I put that in through my research, so it's certainly open to discussion here if you want a different date, if you want to say the day that they take office or some other date. I just threw in something as a placeholder for now. So.
Okay, so it's open for discussion.
I am perfectly fine with the way C is written because there's no guarantee it will be expunged by date of swearing in. So I'm fine with that.
I agree. Thanks for putting it together.
Yeah, I think. Isn't it great to have a city attorney? Any other questions or comments about this? Is everyone satisfied with the way this is written?
Just a question on the, if a person was convicted of a misdemeanor they wouldn't really necessarily be lawfully pardoned or expunged. They wouldn't, would they?
You could seek an expungement or a pardon, and those are a little different. And just to let you understand, a pardon is where you are seeking from the governor an order saying that you are excused from the punishment of the crime you were convicted of. But the crime still remains on your record. It's just you're excused from that punishment. An expungement wipes it off your record, makes it disappear, but doesn't necessarily eliminate the punishment. So they both, and it's done by the court. You can submit for an order of expungement from the court, and the court can order that. So that's why we put in both. Both serve a purpose. Both kind of excuse you from. And one of the kickers in both processes is you have to be done. You have to be done with your sentence before you can put in for either of these. So in that regard, they're both similar. It's just a matter of whether we want to require that it be expunged, but that punishment still exists somewhere, or we want to just say if they're pardoned, which means the governor said, okay, I'm giving you a pass on it, but the punishment still remains. So, but to answer your question, sorry, you could file for that for either a felony or a misdemeanor.
Comments, questions? What's happening with this, the way it's written?
Yeah.
Can I have a motion?
Turn on your mic just so we get that.
Okay, that's Sharon.
I'll make a motion that we accept the eligibility section as written.
I'll second.
We have a second from Susan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimously passed. Okay, moving on to new business. We're starting on page 23 in your packet, Charter Article 5, which is general provisions. And we'll start with Section 501, the severability of provisions. This looks basically just kind of almost like a disclaimer paragraph. Does anyone have any issues with 5.01?
No.
5.2 is just the effective date of the charter. 5.03 is talks about the Charter Review Committee and the process of how the Charter Review Committee operates. Does anyone have any comments about this? Grace?
I just have one little question on the effective date. That remains the same no matter what with the original date, correct?
Correct,
Not with
correct.
any-
'Cause that's
okay.
when it originally took effect. We amended, obviously, every 5 years, as is covered in the next section, but the effective date stays the same.
Does anyone have any comments or conversation about 5.03, how the committee is established in the process?
I have a question. If somebody wanted a change in the charter, but you hadn't hit the 5-year, how would they do that? Or can they do that?
Well, the council always has the ability to put a charter referendum question in front of the people. And as we saw that happen just a couple of years ago, where they were looking at the terms and all that, and the charter, the council came up with language as proposed by them and drafted by the city attorney, and it ultimately went to the voters. So there is a provision to amend the charter. This is just built in there to make sure that the residents are giving a voice at least every 5 years. So. And the council could also call for a committee. Let's say they felt that there was something that needed to be addressed, but they wanted to hear from the public. They could establish a committee, midterm. This is a requirement that a committee be established every 5 years.
Okay, so the council can call it sooner if they
Right.
had a need.
Yes, Jean?
I know it is there. Has there always been 15 people on the charter? Do we always have to have 15, or do we just have to have an odd amount?
Odd amounts on committees always work best because you're voting on things. So if you have an even amount, you can run into that problem where things tie, and a tie means that something doesn't pass. So like if we had an even number here, something came to a tie, it would be the same as a no vote because you need that positive number in order to change something. So the 15 has been in here. I'm not sure how long it's been in here. I didn't do that research, but right now it says 15. But that would be something that you could switch, make it less, make it more. I will tell you, I would discourage more. The more people you get, the less effective it is.
I think they kind of
15
struggle to get.
itself is almost hard to deal with. The one thing that I could suggest, and I've seen this in other places, and we kind of ended up doing it at the end of the day here because we didn't have 15 people stepping up, is to put other stakeholders in, or even if you left it at that number to qualify some of them as stakeholders. In this case, the council for the last remaining seats said that we would have an employee from the police department, an employee from the general employees. I've seen other places that put qualifiers on members to say there'll be one realtor on, there'll be one small business owner on, things like that, to try and make sure that the voice of various stakeholders or community of stakeholders are represented. That's an option that you could do. Or you can look at it as if it's not broke and it's working okay right now, why mess with it? So.
Well, it ended up working out, because I know they struggled to get 15 to start with.
Yeah.
So you had the council members, each had 2, and then they found 5 from all the other departments. But, which, that's fine. I mean, it doesn't have to be changed. I was just wondering if 15 was the number, or if the 10 and maybe 3 at large or whatever. But it seems nobody wants to do anything unless somebody lets them know that the opportunity is really there.
Yeah, I would only have to guess the reason they did 15 is they wanted to get a larger cross-section of the citizenry to have a voice. Because if you do smaller numbers, you do 5 or you do five or 7, something like that, you're getting a smaller number of voices
Smaller
involved.
representation,
Yeah,
sure.
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
Any other conversation about that? Is everyone okay with just leaving that as is? Okay. All right, well, we're going to move to Article 6, which is transition. And Section 6.01 is titled to property reserved. And this, again, is mostly administrative. Does anyone have any questions or comments on 6.01? Bill?
What would happen if we eliminated that? Could the city not collect property taxes, or is that not what that's for?
This is not what gives the city right to collect property taxes. That's in state statute and Florida Constitution.
But they couldn't penalize the property owner for not paying it? That's how I read it.
I hadn't looked at this from a standpoint of eliminating it. Hold on for just a second. No, I wouldn't see that would, basically what this is saying is that, those property taxes or the liens against property for either taxes or other things, that becomes an asset of the city. Again, that's kind of what state law says. It's an asset of the city. That's important because of once those taxes are due and owing and unpaid, it becomes by operational law an asset of the city. Then it's important as to how the city deals with those assets. And that's an important element, because once something becomes an asset of the city, you want to have some process in place in order to control how those assets are dealt with. So, you don't want something to inure as an asset to the city and then just have some staff member be able to just write it off. If somebody comes in and says, hey, I got this lien, oh, no problem, don't worry about it, we'll let it go. No, once things are assets to the city, there has to be a process in place to make sure that that asset benefits the city and the citizens, not just get wiped out for some reason because somebody asks.
Was this when the charter was written? Was this to make sure that there was, so we have the document of the charter for the city, and then now we have a corporation to accept all the goods and things that are owned by the city to operate it? I mean, is it two separate little pieces that are intertwined?
Really, that would be governed more by ordinance than
Okay.
this. This is just saying that when those taxes are due and owing, that's an asset of the city. And then, yes, we do have ordinances as far as how, our assets are managed. But this is more just making sure that it's understood that those are assets of the city.
But isn't that covered under state statute?
The assets, it's covered by state law, and
Then is it necessary to have here, is all I'm asking.
Yeah, what's the purpose?
Yeah, exactly.
Is this talking about personal property or property that's already owned by the city? It's kind of unclear in here what we're
Exactly.
talking about.
this, yeah. Oh, should I?
All real and personal property.
Having a little sidebar to the right.
Yeah.
All right. No, that, the manager brings up a good point. This entire Article 6 is a transition article, that it really does read like this was something that, when we became a charter city, it took care of all that, kind
initial-
of tied up those loose ends as to, the way things were before the charter went into effect, and it maintained that. It maintained those rights of the city to maintain that ownership, and then the other things, as you see in the next two sections, as far as ordinances and everything, and made sure those all still continued in force and effect.
But
So really, it was a transition that was necessary when the charter first came into effect, which would have been back in, I believe, the 70s is when we got our first charter. The city, obviously, was, here 100 years, but the first charter only came into effect back about 50 years ago, so.
But
So
if
is it
if it's city property, how can they have taxes due, unpaid, uncollected permits? It sounds like we're talking about personal property
Personal
here.
property,
Yes.
correct.
But normally that's put out for a bid for tax sale, correct? I mean, if somebody's arrears in their taxes, those things are sold.
For property taxes, yes.
Yeah.
The way the property tax works, and again, this is wrapped up in state statute, but property taxes, the taxes aren't paid, the tax collector puts out that tax deed sale, and then there's a whole process where a person purchases the tax deed by paying the taxes, and they have that tax deed, but then it has to go for 7 years before that parcel could be sold for those unpaid taxes and everything else. That's a whole statutory structure. As the manager mentioned, this was more a matter of preserving the city's rights in that process at the time.
But at this point,
but
it's
at
pretty
is it-
meaningless.
is
At
it
this point,
necessary?
as an article that was intended for transition, when we became a charter city, it's not really in effect anymore. Now we rely on state law. So it's a matter of if it's if it's no longer in use, it sits there, it's dormant. Could we take it out? We could. The one thing I could research is whether we need to do that through a referendum, or if, because the law statute takes priority and is going to preempt these provisions, whether we could take them out as a matter of law without putting it to the voters. So I could certainly do that research and see if we even need this to be a referendum question, or if they could just go away based upon the fact that the law requires that they go away.
Let's do that.
Well, I have a question. Would this remove any code enforcement liens or construction board judgments if you take this out?
If we take it, and that would be part of the research, my opinion right now would be no, because state statute still preserves that process. Okay. And I think that's what we're saying, is that this was necessary at the time we went to a charter city to make sure that anything that existed remained. But now that's all governed by state statute. State statute is what gives us the authority to cite code enforcement to lien properties that are in violation of unpaid code enforcement liens, and then gives us the right to foreclose on those if necessary through that state statute and the authority of circuit court. So,
Wanda, did you have something?
Does this have anything to do with what the planning committee is going through as far as for the commercial property in Sebastian, with their plans of changing and letting
This transition article really was for 1979.
yeah.
And it's just sitting there with no purpose.
And again, that authority as, establishing our local planning agency and our right for zoning and rezoning and the comprehensive plan and all that, that's all separate and apart from this.
Okay. This
those
is just
are-
for personal property and not commercial?
Well, honestly, so when the city was the city before we had a charter. So when the charter was done, which was many years later, this transitioned the city of Sebastian from a non-charter entity to a charter entity. And this took its assets and pushed them over. Is this correct?
Right. But to your question, that would apply to both personal property
And commercial.
And
or I
commercial?
should say residential property, agriculture property, and commercial property. It would all be treated the same now under Florida statute, not under anything that would be existing here.
Okay.
Not anymore.
Charles is on Zoom and he has his hand raised. Hi, Charles.
Hi, how's everybody? I was just letting you know I was here, and I apologize for not being in the room. I've been to Fort Lauderdale and Orlando today, and I still got one more run to do. But I wanted to know I'm here with you in Zoom, and that's all I got.
Okay, thank you so much.
I wonder if this could have been put in when the city took over GDC, the whole Highlands.
I mean, that's big possibility. Yeah. I mean, and I've actually, for some reason, have been the city attorney in 4 different GDC communities, and it's a nightmare. And I'm sure a lot of you have experienced that, and so that could be a possibility because GDC, through their bankruptcy proceedings and otherwise, dumped a lot of properties on the local governments when they went bankrupt, and we had to manage them, find a way to manage them, and as far as making clear that we didn't just take the property, but we took whatever liens or rights and everything that they had along with it.
So it seems like, are we thinking about taking the whole section out, section 6?
that the will of the
I would,
committee?
yeah, I mean, that could be a possibility, but let me do the research, because what we could possibly do, like I said on the first day, amending it through a citizen referendum is one way we amend the charter. But by law, there's other things you can do to amend a charter. If there's a change in law that impacts it, we can change our charter to comply with state law. And so this might be one of those things that we could say, this has all been preempted by state law since this was first put into place. And we could possibly take it out with a simple ordinance done by the city council and not worry about a referendum question.
Which actually, when you really read it and how confusing it could be if you didn't have someone to talk through the history of it, it might be a tough thing to put in front of voters and explain. So, yeah. So is everyone okay with kind of tabling that and get back to it next time? We'll go to 6.04, ordinances preserved. And this just basically enforces what ordinances we have remain in force until they're repealed or changed. So anybody have any questions about that or the writing of it? Section 6.05 is continuation of former charter provisions. And that, again, is an administrative paragraph more than anything else. Wanda?
Again, I just want to, this does not have anything to do with what the planning board wants to do.
No. And all three, and I just looked up, all three of these provisions were in here when the very first charter came into effect in 1979. And no, this has nothing to do with the planning board or anything, no.
Okay.
That's the charter, folks. We've made it through. So let's talk a little bit about forward movement, because we have a lot. So far we have agreed to 2 changes that we'd like to see to the charter. One is on eligibility, and we have the other one here too, which is the compensation clause. Are the 2 that we kind of have sitting over to the side. So if we look at our calendar, our meeting calendar, and since we do want the city attorney to get us some information on this 6, the transition area, we possibly we're ahead of ourselves, so we could possibly not have a meeting next Tuesday and give him an extra week to come back on March 30, and then we could address that transition section, as well as make some look at the whole charter, go back and take a couple of weeks and look at the charter and see if there's something else that we want to talk about that we may have missed and that we want to talk to before we move forward with the public meetings. And also we can then talk about making sure that section 2.05 and 2.02 that we agreed on is still, everybody's cool with it. It's like the one last pass before we move to the next level. So how do you think about that, having next Tuesday off?
That sounds good.
It's a good idea. I'd make a motion that we cancel the meeting for March 17th.
And I second it since it's St. Patrick's Day.
Okay.
Unless we're going to meet like.
Oh, yeah, it is St.
we're gonna meet
Patrick's
like
Day,
at Meg
too.
O'Brien, just-
What they're talking about.
Any objection to foregoing it?
Try. Well, that's why nobody goes to these meetings, but I'm down to.
I honestly did not, Charlie, I did not hear what he said. Except
Wait a minute. Wait.
You're breaking up, Charlie.
Hold on one
up.
second. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Can you repeat that question? I'm sorry. I'm sitting there trying to press my button to get on, and then I lost my train of thought. You
So
were talking about canceling the next meeting?
our next meeting is March 17th, next Tuesday. and we're going to cancel that meeting and just come back on Monday, March 30th to review to do a review of the charter, as well as go over the transition that the attorney is going to do some research for us on, and make sure 2.05 compensation and 2.02 eligibility are goes for us to move to the next step.
Okay, I will vote yes.
Well, we didn't ask you to vote,
There was a motion on that.
but that's okay.
You know what the best part about
I'm
this is
sorry.
that my wife is listening
I'm
somewhere out
sorry,
there.
I
Show up,
The
Carly.
dispatcher.
I just
Show up.
couldn't resist. All
Gotta
right.
vote on something.
So on this, so if we go to staff matters,
Madam Chair, I have a church finance meeting I have,
okay.
take off for.
You're okay with this? Okay.
I have a couple things, if you don't mind. Just a
Yes.
couple things to think about. One is, we spent all of this time looking at the existing charter and how it might need to be amended. One thing that I might suggest to you before our next meeting, which will be the one after the one we canceled, is maybe go through the charter again and think about anything that might want to be added, okay? Because we have that flexibility at this time to propose new concepts or new ideas, and I'm not encouraging that, but I'm just saying is that this is the time. If there's something that you believe need to be in the charter, and you could look at other cities and see if they have something that you think would be good. Some cities have very comprehensive, very long charters. Others have very short charters. So, it might be something.
Talking to us.
Can you mute Zoom, please? Thank you.
So that might be a good use of time to look and say, hey, what if we did this? What if we put this in the charter? Remembering that the charter, it's hard to get stuff in, it's harder to get stuff out, harder to change things. So it would have to be something that we felt very strongly about. Not advocating, like I said, for anything, but I've been in cities where, especially down south where land is a little bit more at the premium, they would put provisions in there saying the city couldn't sell any city property without a referendum. There's other cities like Palm Bay, only because they're in such debt, they put in their charter the city cannot do any bond referendums without a referendum vote. These are tough. These are tough for operations. I'm not looking at the city manager because I'm sure he's shooting me daggers at the moment. It's like, what are you suggesting here? But that's the type of thing I'm talking about, is that kind of outside the box thinking and see if there's anything you want to propose to the group that the group should talk about. The other thing that we could think about, and we haven't mentioned it at all, but I certainly could mention it to council in my matters on Wednesday, is whether you think it would be worthwhile if we have what we think we want to address, and obviously the majority of the charter we're not talking about touching, is whether you want to ask them if they'd like to have a joint meeting. We'd have to advertise it as such. It'd be a joint city council charter review committee meeting in a workshop format here, to tell them what you've come up with so far and see if they have any ideas that maybe we haven't thought about. They may say, what really causes us a heartache is this section you guys didn't talk about, and that would be another idea that we could do if this committee wanted to meet with them informally, because everything we do here is going to them eventually. And if we met with them informally now, it might keep stuff from going to them and them saying, no, we don't like this, send it back to the committee and tell them to keep working on it. So it might be a thought process there. So just a couple of things for thought.
Wanda?
I think that's a good idea, because I know there are a lot of people that are upset over the planning board with what they want to do in the city. And I think it should be with, because you just were mentioning about changing things in the city with the building and things like that, and that's what this is all about. They want to put all these homes in and make our city not the nice little Sebastian that we live in now. I mean, we have enough people, enough cars in this town. We have enough accidents now. And if you bring in another 500 people, families, I mean, what are we going to look like?
Yeah. I'm sorry.
I do think that that's outside the confines of the charter, our
Okay.
job, because our job is really the 50,000 level, and everything's operating underneath that. So we're not going to control planning and zoning.
Okay, because when you talked, you mentioned a thing about the city selling their property. Well, that's what we've done. We sold the property, or I don't think they bought it yet.
Most of the developments that are being discussed right now, the city has never owned that property. It's a private property, and this is a problem.
Oh, it is?
And it's not just us, it's other places. We see it in the state where people are complaining about the growth. The problem that we have, and the problem that every city and county has, is that private property owners have rights. And if you own 300 acres and you want to sell it to, some home builder that's going to put in, homes, as a property owner, that's your right. Now, what the city does, and I think the city does it really well, is they control that by making sure that the developments look nice and that the infrastructure is there and all of those things. But if we can't get to the point where we just tell property owners, you can't build on your property, there are acts in place that get us sued for that, and a lot of cities have been sued for not allowing development of the property because property owners have the right to do with their property what they want. So, but
unfortunately, there's just too much misinformation out there.
yeah.
There is a lot of misinformation, and really, if you have a lot of people and you talk to them about what's happening in the city and some rezoning of places to have a lot more development, you may want to talk to your state representative, because the state has legislation pending that they're going to take away some of the city's ability in relation to rezoning for people that have bought those huge tracts. So it might not even be a city issue very soon, because it's now, it's happening now in the state legislature. So just get those signs out, get those signs out. So, Madam Clerk.
I'm good for tonight, thank you.
Good, okay. Anybody else on the committee have anything that they want to discuss?
Just briefly, I'm sorry I'm reading this over again, what was suggested for 2.02, just something for everyone to think about, that subsection B here about a person shall not be qualified to run if that person has a record of conviction. So conviction in the criminal law context is an adjudication of guilt, but people usually in their first offense might get a withhold of adjudication. That might even be for a crime of moral turpitude or a breach of public trust. I'm not advocating for one way or the other, but I know sometimes you'll see in certain statutes conviction for the purposes of this section may mean adjudication of guilt or a withhold of adjudication. So if that's something that anybody is concerned about, we'd have to put that specifically in there. Because conviction would mean an adjudication. And if that's the case, then expungement's not necessary to put in there, because you can only have an expungement for a withhold of adjudication. That's not a conviction under the law.
I can definitely look at that and bring that back next time, because the points you raise are right. When there's a withheld adjudication, you've generally have pled out no contest. You're not disputing the charge, but as part of the the sentencing package. The judge is agreeing to withhold that adjudication for a year until you manage to, not get in any further trouble. And so it possibly could go in there because it's not an acquittal. So it's not anything saying you didn't do it. It's basically saying you did do it. You're just not being punished for it. So.
Yes, you're not considered convicted under the law, but
Yeah.
you still have it on your record. And again, a withhold's the only thing that can be expunged. An adjudication of guilt can't be expunged. So if we're all agreeing conviction means adjudication of guilt, which is what it means under the law, then we don't need to put or, pardoned or expunged. It could just cross out the or expunged part.
Right. Yeah, I'll bring something back so we can clarify that. And if we want to expand upon that, it might be worthwhile. It's a great suggestion.
Any other comments? Sharon? Oh.
Am I on? Sorry. If we go back, if you look at section 2.28 in section E3, maybe we need something like this to fall into that, where it talks about a person pleading guilty or no low contendo, or is found guilty, they will deem to have been convicted.
Where are you, Sharon? What page are you on, please?
12.
But if she's talking about not having that type of coverage in here,
That could be a possible place where that could be added in. They
Wouldn't that
plead
cover
guilty,
what
they
you're
plead no
talking about?
contendere, or have adjudication withheld.
I'm not advocating one way or the other, but I'm just saying in the language that was suggested for that 2.02 eligibility, normally we would take out or expunge because that wouldn't, if somebody's convicted, they would never be eligible for expungement.
okay.
But you can define conviction to mean an adjudication of guilt or a withhold, and which withhold is eligible for expungement. So then we would keep or expunged if that was the case. I'm sorry, I was prosecutor for 10 years, so this stuff
Right.
matters to me.
Well, that's why I wondered if that no low contendo, where they weren't,
I
you
know
said
cont-
something about they weren't actually convicted, they kind of pled out basically, right?
That's not necessarily what a withhold means. A no contest is just a type of plea that you're saying, I'm not pleading guilty, I'm not pleading not guilty, I'm
Right.
just saying I don't want to contest the charge. You could be adjudicated or you could get a withhold in either of those scenarios if you plead no contest.
But you're still convicted. Okay.
Okay,
I
so we will not have a meeting next Tuesday, March 17th. We will reconvene on Monday, March 30th, and everyone will kind of take another global look at the charter to see if there's anything you want to bring up. Our attorney is going to bring back to us some language for 202 and 206.
6, Article 6.
205, and we'll go through those and see where we are to kind of alter the calendar if we're ready to do that next time. May I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Oh, Nick, that was quick on the draw. Okay.
Somebody's hungry.
Do I have I have a second. We are adjourned. Let's go.